Let me kick things off today with something that goes a lot deeper than radar screens and model printouts. Because what unfolded yesterday across the Deep South was genuinely heartbreaking, and it deserves to be said out loud before we talk about a single isobar. Yesterday, 4 separate tornado emergencies were declared in one day across the Deep South. 4. To put that in perspective, we haven't seen that many stacked up in a single calendar day since 2023. A ferocious, long-tracking supercell tore through the southwestern corner of Mississippi near Monticello and Brookhaven, leaving behind what damage survey teams are preliminarily calling at least 2 intense to violent tornadoes, likely rated EF3 or above. And here's what makes that even more jaw-dropping. That same storm kept its rotation going for a full 90 minutes. It just refused to die. Mobile homes and RVs throughout the impact zone weren't just damaged. They were yanked clean off their foundations like they were made of paper. At least 2 people have lost their lives, and many more are in critical condition tonight. To every family, every neighbor, every community across southwestern Mississippi that is waking up to a changed landscape this morning, this channel is standing right there with you. If you know anyone near those areas, please reach out. A simple text could mean the world to someone right now. What happened yesterday is also a powerful, painful reminder. And I want to say this as clearly as I possibly can before we dive into any forecast maps or model data. Severe weather does not care about risk categories. It kills people on slight risk days. It kills people on marginal risk days. It strikes states that haven't heard a tornado warning siren in months. Alabama went the entire month of April without a single tornado warning, not one. Mississippi had been quiet for weeks, and then yesterday happened. This is not a failure of forecasting. The tools, the models, the warnings, they're better than they've ever been. The lesson here is simpler and more sobering than that. Every severe weather threat demands your full respect every single time. Know exactly where your shelter is before the storm forms. Keep your weather alerts switched on. And please, never shrug off a threat just because the risk level doesn't have the word high attached to it. The atmosphere doesn't read those labels. Before we get rolling, if you'd like a specific forecast for your city or region, drop it in the comments below. I work through them individually as time allows. And if this content is useful to you, a like and a subscription genuinely helps keep this going. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, let's get into it. Today's picture. The threat isn't fully packed up. Yet, the severe weather footprint is stepping back from Wednesday's violent outbreak. But don't mistake stepping back for gone. The Storm Prediction Center still has a marginal risk draped across the southeast coastline today, and it covers a surprisingly long stretch of cities: Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tallahassee, Panama City, Savannah, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, NC, and Mobile, Alabama. The main danger today is damaging winds, with an elevated, though not alarming, chance of isolated tornadoes, particularly through the morning and into early afternoon. The atmospheric machinery that was cranking out violent tornadoes yesterday has shifted east and lost a lot of its punch. But spin-up tornadoes embedded inside today's storm clusters can't be completely ruled out anywhere along this coastal corridor. These are sneaky, fast-developing storms, the kind that don't always give you much lead time. The important thing to understand about today's timing: this is front-loaded. The bulk of concerning activity is happening right now, rolling through the morning and into early afternoon. By the time the afternoon matures, storms will be progressively fizzling out. If you're near any of those cities, keep your alert systems live through noon local time. After that, the risk fades quickly. Tornado threat should be largely wrapped up by mid-afternoon, though Jacksonville may still see some gusty, damaging wind potential into early evening. Flooding. Actually, the bigger story. Today, here's something that might surprise you. The flooding concern is actually the more serious headline in some of these areas today, arguably overshadowing the tornado risk entirely. The frontal boundary has been essentially parked, stalled like a broken-down car, across the deep south for days now. Combine the extreme rainfall that fell yesterday with the fresh moisture streaming in today, and some locations are staring down truly significant rainfall totals. The Weather Prediction Center has upgraded portions of central Mississippi, including Meridian and Laurel, through Montgomery, Alabama, to a moderate risk of excessive rainfall. That is not a phrase forecasters throw around casually. South of Birmingham, folks need to be paying close attention. Here's why it's so serious. The soils are already completely waterlogged from yesterday's storms. There's nowhere for the water to go. Even modest additional rainfall can trigger flash flooding rapidly in conditions like these. The golden rule applies without exception. If you see water rising on a road, turn around. Don't drown! No destination is worth your life. The slight risk for excessive rainfall also spreads to Chattanooga, the Atlanta Metro, Huntsville, Baton Rouge, and Lake Charles. Flash flooding concerns are real across all of these areas, and they're real right now, not just later today. The big picture, 10 days out, and this pattern is genuinely bizarre. All right, let's zoom way out. I want to give you the full atmospheric picture for the next 10 days. Because the pattern we've been locked into is, and I don't use this word lightly, one of the strangest May setups in recent meteorological memory. Understanding what's driving it is essential for making sense of everything that follows. A massive upper-level trough. Think of it as a giant atmospheric dip or valley. One has been anchored over the Great Lakes and southeastern Canada for nearly 2 solid weeks. It's sitting there spinning like a slow-motion gyroscope, continuously hauling cold air southward into the Midwest and Ohio Valley while simultaneously acting as the engine behind all of these severe weather setups across the deep South. This is not how May is supposed to work. Normally, by this point in the spring, storm systems are charging off the Rockies and rolling across the Central Plains in classic Tornado Alley fashion, the pattern most of us grew up learning about. Instead, this trough is steering disturbances along unusual, almost backwards feeling tracks, sending severe weather repeatedly into Dixie Alley while simultaneously burying Colorado under historically unusual May snowfall. Denver picked up nearly 5 inches of snow this week, more than the city had accumulated for the entire winter season before this single May storm arrived. Let that sink in. The Oklahoma and Texas panhandles are seeing temperatures flirting with freezing tonight. And yet by early next week, those same communities could be approaching triple-digit heat. That's a 60 to 70 degree temperature swing in roughly 1 week. That is not a normal atmospheric pattern. That is a pattern under serious stress from competing atmospheric forces, and it is directly connected to an El Niño that is developing in the Pacific at a historically rapid pace. Day-by-day breakdown, Friday, May 8th. A relatively quiet day for most of the country, and honestly, after the week the Deep South has had, that's exactly what the doctor ordered. A few isolated storms linger across Texas and Louisiana. Some unsettled weather continues across the Four Corners region and the Southern Rockies. North Dakota may deal with gusty winds pushing past 30 mph, but broadly speaking, this is a transitional day, a genuine exhale. Saturday, May 9th, Mother's Day Eve. The atmosphere begins reloading. Scattered storm activity becomes more widespread east of the Rockies. Oklahoma and Kansas are the areas to keep an eye on for isolated severe weather. That said, instability values Saturday are fairly limited. I'm not expecting anything close to an organized outbreak. Keep your radar app handy if you've got outdoor plans in those states. But this is not a high alert day by any stretch. Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day. Here's where I want to spend some real time, because Sunday's setup is considerably more dynamic than a lot of people are currently giving it credit for. A more organized storm system is taking shape across the Deep South for Mother's Day, and the combination of atmospheric instability and moisture streaming in from the Gulf could produce at least scattered severe weather across the Gulf Coast states. Additionally, a weak nor'easter-style signature may develop along the East Coast as this system interacts with a coastal low-pressure track, bringing windy, rainy conditions to the mid-Atlantic and northeast coastlines Sunday into Monday. This is not a major coastal storm, but if your Mother's Day plans involve being outdoors anywhere from the Carolinas up through New England, have a solid backup plan ready. It may be genuinely unpleasant. For those of you in the interior of the country, the Midwest and Plains are actually looking better than the coastlines on Sunday. Temperatures in the 50s and 60s across the south-central U.S. make for a cool but perfectly manageable afternoon if you're celebrating Mother's Day there. But here's the really significant thing I want to flag for Mother's Day weekend specifically. The rainfall totals stacking up across the southeast are going to be remarkable. Between yesterday's storms, today's lingering activity, Saturday's system, and Sunday's setup, some portions of Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and Alabama could see 6 to 8 inches of total rainfall over the course of this weekend. Locally, even higher in the corridors where training thunderstorms set up and just keep firing over the same ground. For areas sitting in severe to extreme drought, that's genuinely life-giving moisture. But 6 to 8 inches of rain in 72 hours falling on already saturated ground is a flash flooding crisis in the making. The moderate risk for excessive rainfall we're looking at today is almost certainly not the last such outlook we'll see this weekend. Watch for flash flood warnings across this entire corridor through Monday morning. Monday, May 11th, the Sunday system lifts northward and the nor'easter signature becomes more clearly defined along the northeast coast. New England picks up rain and potentially gusty winds as it moves through. Meanwhile, across the northern plains, a Clipper-type system develops, one of those fast-moving, blue-collar little storm systems bringing a quick burst of showers and, remarkably, snow showers to the upper Midwest and northern plains, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. I know. Snow showers in May sounds almost offensive, but the cold air in place is cold enough and the northwest flow pattern is persistent enough that isolated snow showers in the upper Midwest during the second week of May are a genuine, legitimate possibility. The precipitation maps don't lie. Tuesday, May 12th, the Clipper drops into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, serving up more cool and wet conditions to a region that has been running persistently below normal for weeks now. Oklahoma and Texas are worth watching Tuesday for a potential severe weather setup as warmth begins surging northward out of Mexico ahead of the next disturbance. If that low-pressure system over the southwestern states can get organized on schedule, Tuesday could feature a meaningful severe weather window across the southern plains. Confidence isn't high enough yet for specific alerts, but if you're in Oklahoma City, Wichita, or the Dallas-Fort Worth area, keep Tuesday's forecast on your radar as we get closer. Wednesday through Thursday, another round of storm systems crossing the central states, with storminess building across the plains and eventually pushing eastward. The European model is notably more aggressive than the American GFS on a potentially significant storm system for Thursday, May 14th, across the Midwest and Central Plains. When the models are disagreeing this far out, I take both signals seriously and watch for resolution as the days tick by. The extended pattern, where it gets really extraordinary. Here's where things get genuinely fascinating and a little unsettling. Beyond May 15th, there are two competing model signals that paint very different pictures for the country, and both are worth understanding. The American GFS model suggests that around May 15th, the persistent trough dug in over the eastern United States begins eroding as warmer Pacific air floods in from the southwest. the textbook El Niño signal. Under this scenario, temperatures across the central and eastern U.S. recover toward normal. The chronic cold pattern finally breaks, and the severe weather focus begins shifting northward toward the Central Plains and Midwest in the climatologically active late May window. This is the more optimistic scenario, particularly for farmers and gardeners across the Corn Belt who've been completely unable to plant due to relentless cold and wet conditions. A window of warmth and drying would be enormously welcome. The European model, on the other hand, is showing something that can only be described as remarkable, and remarkable in a deeply concerning way. In the extended portion of the European run, a deep Arctic air mass originates over far northern Canada and shoots almost straight southward into the eastern United States around May 18th to 20th. We're talking about temperatures running 20 to 30 degrees below normal across the eastern U.S. during the third week of May, potentially approaching territory. That would be unprecedented for that time of year. Places that should be enjoying comfortable 60s and 70s could instead be shivering through the 30s and 40s. The GFS does not show this at all. These two models are looking at fundamentally different atmospheric futures, and this is a very late signal that carries significant uncertainty. But the European model has been consistently, stubbornly, generating this outcome run after run, and that consistency alone makes it worth flagging loudly. If it verifies even partially, it would represent one of the coldest late spring patterns in the modern weather record for the eastern United States. History book stuff. Western heat. No ambiguity. Here, regardless of the disagreement on that late May Arctic scenario, here's something both models are completely aligned on. The western United States is heading into a serious, prolonged heat event. The ridge of high pressure building across the west is going to be deep, persistent, and intensifying over the next 10 days. Excessive heat warnings are going to become routine across Arizona, Southern California, and the California Central Valley starting next week. Phoenix is already knocking on triple digits today and still climbing. The Central Valley is heading toward 100-degree territory. Las Vegas is heading toward genuinely dangerous heat. If you live in the desert Southwest or Southern California, please start your heat preparation now. Not when the warnings go up, but now. Hydrate aggressively. Check on elderly neighbors and family members. And never, under any circumstances, leave people or pets in a parked vehicle. The heat building in the Southwest is not a brief spike that fades in a day or two. This is the establishment of a heat dome, a feature that can settle in and linger for multiple weeks.